Hey friends, tonight we're slipping back into the Middle Ages again. A world where people saw things so strange that if you or us stood there today, we'd be on the phone to the news, the priest, and maybe an ex, just in case this was the end of the world and we owed somebody an apology. So before you settle in, take a breath, get comfortable. And if this kind of late-night medieval chaos is your thing, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy being here. Drop a comment telling where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Or something quietly magical about knowing this story is drifting through rooms and headphones all over the world at once. Now, dim the lights. Maybe let a fan hum softly in the background, or let the night sounds outside your window do the work. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. And together, we'll walk into a time when the dark was thicker, the stars were colder, and the world was full of things no one could explain. Most medieval villagers began their day expecting the usual annoyances. A cartwheel snapping at the worst possible moment, a batch of ale turning sour, or Gerald. Every village had a Gerald circulating. The newest rumor with the dedication of a one-man news network. What they did not expect was to wander into the barn and find that the cow had delivered something so uncanny that even heaven, if it could speak, might have muttered, "All right, who changed the settings?" Because every so often, medieval cows produced calves that looked as though they'd been designed by a committee of very drunk goblins. There were the classics, a two-headed calf, both faces staring in different directions, as if judging the entire village from two angles at once. Or a calf whose face simply hadn't arrived on schedule, just a smooth, unsettling expanse of skin, like a horror jump scare placed gently in a pile of straw. Sometimes the features were all there, just rearranged. A mouth perched on top of the head, eyes set too far apart, as though the universe had hit shuffle on the face before anyone could stop it. And because these villagers had never heard the word mutation, never studied genetics, and had no concept of recessive traits, they jumped immediately to the conclusion that felt most obvious to them. The heavens were furious, utterly, unreasonably furious. People switched into prophecy mode at alarming speed. This was a sign, they said, a warning. Definitely Margaret's fault. She had greeted a crow yesterday, and that simply could not be normal. Monks arrived fast, robes swishing, scribes clutching ink and parchment, ready to immortalize the unfortunate calf as solemnly as a miracle. They sketched its twisted features with all the gravity of master artists and wrote beneath it something thunderous-like, "In the year of our Lord." There was born a beast with two heads, foretelling chaos. The calf, meanwhile, stood there breathing, confused, hungry, and utterly uninterested in the apocalypse. The village then split into factions. Some insisted it was a divine omen. Others whispered that it was a demonic message, a small hoofed telegram from hell. A quiet handful dared to suggest, maybe it's just a weird cow. Those people were ignored promptly and completely. Practicality had no place in a moment like that. What to do with the creature became its own drama. One camp believed such animals brought blessings and should be kept, watched over, maybe even venerated. Another group was equally certain they brought curses, and that the only safe answer was to bury them as quickly and discreetly as possible. A third group, equipped with the kind of confidence that only the medieval mind could muster, shrugged and said, "Meat is meat." They would suggest eating it with a straight face. While the rest of the village quietly started deciding which distant field they would be exiled to. And then, inevitably, the Lord arrived. Not out of mercy, and not because he cared about the cow, but because lords loved collecting unusual things. If there was an animal that looked even vaguely like something from a legend, he wanted it in his courtyard as soon as possible. And to the people in that village, a monstrous birth was more than biology. It was an event, a spectacle, a living headline. Something to panic over, pray about, argue over, and of course, something to blame on Margaret and her suspicious friendliness with crows. Now, shift the scene. Imagine living in a world without electricity. No neon signs, no phone screens, no quick searches that could tell you, "Yes, strange blue light is fine. Please calm down instead." Picture stepping outside during a storm and seeing the church steeple glowing bright blue, as if it were about to cast a spell over the entire village. Welcome to St. Elmo's Fire, Medieval Edition. Today, it's just plasma. A little electric performance caused by strong fields during storms, but to a medieval mind, this was no scientific curiosity. This was the sky writing in blue, a cosmic announcement, a divine mood swing, a supernatural promise that no one was sleeping peacefully that night. When these eerie blue flames flickered along ship masts at sea, sailors reacted like people who believed they were being visited by glowing angels. Half the crew dropped to their knees in prayer, the other half simply cried, while the captain did his best to look wise and calm, even though he had absolutely no idea what was happening. On land, peasants reacted with equal creativity. If the church steeple began to shine blue, it meant demons had arrived, obviously. The barn roof glowed. Witches were involved, clearly. If your own hair crackled and glowed in the storm, well, that was it. You were sure you were already halfway into the afterlife. Some brave souls, or perhaps just very curious ones, reached out to touch it. Medieval people had this strange blend of fear and boldness, terrified of everything, but still willing to poke mysterious glowing phenomena with sticks or bare hands. Those who made contact tended to receive a sharp electric jolt, sent stumbling backward. Afterwards, the village debated whether they had been spiritually charged, lightly cursed, or both at once. Priests adored St. Elmo's fire in their own nervous way. It handed them ready-made sermon material. They would stand before the congregation and proclaim with impressive gravity, "This is a sign from heaven." Inside, they were quietly praying that it would not happen again while they were on duty. Travelers brought their own interpretations. Angels, demons, sea spirits climbing up from the waves. Proof that someone in the village had angered God. Everyone turned suspicious eyes toward Gerald, because Gerald always offended someone. High above, if the blue ghost light crowned the turret of a castle, the Lord could step out and boldly declare that this shimmering crown proved his divine right to rule. Down in the fields, peasants shivered and exchanged looks that said, "We disagree." But we're not saying it out loud. The reality, of course, was harmless. The world was not ending. The air was simply putting on a strange electric show. But in a time without textbooks, without weather forecasts, and with a deep conviction that everything meant something, that blue glow became a cosmic message of in. If the only message was, "The storm is bad, go inside." And if you lived in medieval Europe and suddenly felt the urge to dance uncontrollably, that was not cute. That was not charming. That was a medical crisis. The dancing plague turned whole communities into unwilling dancers. This wasn't elegant waltzing or cheerful festival reels. It was something more desperate, more frightening. Legs that refused to stop, bodies that moved as if possessed. The most famous outbreak struck Strasbourg in the 16th century, when a single woman stepped into the street and began to dance. People assumed she would stop soon. She did not. Villagers watched, then another joined, then another. Peer pressure, fear, or something stranger took hold. Within days, dozens were dancing. Within weeks, hundreds. It looked like a flash mob written by a nightmare. No one planned it, no one enjoyed it, and everyone was desperate for it to end. Today, some historians suspect mass hysteria, deep psychological stress bursting out in the only way the mind knew how. Back then, doctors blamed hot blood, because when you don't understand something, hot blood, cold blood, or the devil tend to cover most situations. Priests declared it a curse and prescribed prayer, fasting, and when those didn't work, music. The idea was to play music so that the dancers could literally dance the demon out. So musicians were hired. Drums and pipes. Imagine being so exhausted your legs shake, but still being driven to move. While someone enthusiastically keeps the rhythm going as if this were the greatest show in town. The dancers were terrified. Some begged people to hold them down. Some collapsed in the dust, only to scramble back to their feet seconds later, because their bodies did not agree that it was time to rest. They danced through pain, through hunger, through thirst, through blisters, and through the worst medieval curse of all, being watched by everybody you knew. Local authorities eventually intervened, not out of tender concern, but because people dancing themselves into collapse was very bad for productivity and taxes. Their solution was wonderfully, tragically medieval: build a stage, put the dancers on it, add professional musicians, turn the crisis into a performance, as if that would help. It did not. Some villagers, bored and starved for diversion, stood at the edges, and watched it all the way they might watch a festival. What's happening today? Oh, just 40 people dancing against their will. Better, they decided, than staring at goats again. After a while, as suddenly as it had begun, the plague burned itself out. The dancers, drained and bewildered, went back to their lives, and the town was left with questions. Was it spoiled food? Collective stress? Something in the water? No one agreed. But everyone agreed on this. It was the worst dance marathon humanity had ever hosted, and no one won anything for participating. Now lift your eyes from the cobblestones to the sky. If you've ever looked up at a big flock of birds and thought, wow, that's a lot, medieval people would have invited you to sit down and reconsider your definition of a lot, because what they saw wasn't a simple flock. It wasn't even a massive swarm. It was something closer to an airborne army, a moving sky of feathers that briefly turned day into dusk. Migration then was on a scale that's hard to imagine now. Vast numbers of starlings, cranes, geese, and countless others rose together, forming a great rolling river of wings, stretching from one horizon to the other. Two medieval villagers. This wasn't a natural seasonal event. This was a message, a sign, feathered omen crossing the heavens. Picture yourself as a peasant, bent over a field, hands in the earth, when the light suddenly goes strange. Not clouded, blotted out by wings. The sky darkens. Air fills with shrill cries, beating feathers, and the sound of thousands upon thousands of birds overhead. It feels less like weather and more like a judgment. People reacted the way people tend to react when they didn't understand something and it's enormous. They panicked. Some dropped to their knees, convinced that God had chosen a very noisy, very dramatic way to speak. Others decided this must be the end of the world. Medieval Europe ended the world regularly. An impressive number of things were believed to signal the apocalypse. A few souls tried to be optimistic and suggested that perhaps the swarming sky was a good omen. Most of their neighbors looked at them as if they'd lost their minds. The parish priest, of course, had to say something. So he did what clergy all over Europe did in these moments. He straightened his shoulders, stepped up, and explained confidently what none of them truly understood. The birds, he might proclaim, are forming a heavenly army, and as if to underline or undermine his authority, a single goose might land behind him and honk with such fury that everyone quietly wondered if that particular bird had been hired by the devil. The sound was overwhelming. Wings in their thousands beating together sounded like drums and wind and distant thunder all at once. Animals were frightened. Chickens ran in meaningless circles. Horses tried to bolt. Even cats, who usually regarded disasters with pure indifference, looked up with what might have been deep concern. And then there was the mess. No chronicle from the time lovingly describes it, but reality does not care about literary elegance. When millions of birds pass overhead, they do not pause their digestion. Fields, rooftops, carts, and unlucky people became splattered with what might be politely called sky gifts. One person could step outside for a moment and come back looking as if he had lost a battle with a bucket of porridge. Eventually the birds moved on, the light returned, and daily life resumed. Villagers exhaled. Priests acted as though they had predicted the whole thing. The birds continued their journey, utterly unaware of the panic they had caused. For medieval people, these sky armies were terrifying signs. For the birds, it was just another Monday. And finally, if you were a medieval farmer hoping for a peaceful day, a quiet afternoon with your thoughts, your work, and your aching, back the worst sight in the world was a long, narrow ship sliding into view along the river or coast, because that meant Vikings. And where there were Vikings, there might be berserkers. A berserker was not just a warrior. He was the human equivalent of a storm. To his own people, he was an asset. To everyone else, he was terror. These were the fighters who sometimes charged into battle without armor, sometimes without shirts, as if the cold air itself were a challenge worth defeating. There is a special kind of confidence in choosing to run half-naked into combat in northern weather. To a medieval peasant watching from a field or from behind a wooden fence, a berserker did not look entirely human. He looked like a myth that had peeled itself off a carved stone and started running. He might howl like an animal, slam his teeth into the rim of his shield, foam at the mouth, shake, and then rush forward with such speed and fury that time itself seemed to hesitate. Imagine standing there with a hoe in your hands, watching a huge, wild-eyed man with tangled hair and a battle-axe sprint toward you, screaming like a kettle left too long over the fire. You would not think about tactics. You would not think about negotiations. Your first thought would probably be something like, I am about to become a short, sad line in a chronicle. To us, from a safe distance, this world is darkly fascinating.
Owl.
To them, it was immediate. Raw, full of things that could not be explained, only endured. Deformed calves in barns, blue fire on steeples, towns seized by dancing, skies filled with birds, ships carrying men who seemed less like neighbors and more like forces of nature. So as you lie wherever you are tonight, on your bed, on a couch, under a blanket, take a breath and let that world drift a little bit closer, and then gently away again. The Middle Ages were full of fear and wonder, of people who looked up at the same sky you see now and tried to make sense of a universe that often felt wild and personal, as though every strange event carried a message. The noises outside your window, the hum of a fan, the creak of the building, let them soften into background, like wind beyond ancient stone. Feel the weight of your own blankets. Let them be your fur-lined cloak. Feel your body sink slowly into the mattress, as though straw and wool were cradling you the way they once cradled sleepers centuries ago. Your breathing slows. Inhale and imagine the faint ghost of wood smoke. Exhale and let your thoughts drift away, as villagers once watched their worries drift upward in the sparks from a hearth. The storms, the birds, the strange lights, the frightening warriors, all of it belongs to a distant world now, a story carried to you through time. What remains with you tonight is only the calm. You are far from those barns and battlements. You are warm enough, safe enough, tired enough, so let your eyes grow heavy. Let the strange wonders of the medieval night fade like mist at sunrise. The story steps back, the world quiets, and the long, gentle dark carries you the rest of the way. Rest now as they once tried to rest, wrapped in your own quiet resilience. Sweet dreams. Now, to truly grasp the berserkers, modern scholars lean on terms like psychological warfare, ... battle trance. Perhaps even hallucinogenic mushrooms stirring the blood. But medieval villagers needed no such words. To them this was simpler, sharper. The man was possessed by something vast, furious, and utterly unhousebroken. Some whispered that berserkers shifted shape mid-clash bear or wolf bursting through the skin. Others swore no blade could bite them, no arrow pierce. A lie, perhaps, but one that chilled the marrow all the same. Many claimed their roars alone could drop cattle in their tracks, and given how medieval beasts startled at shadows, that tale might hold a kernel of truth. Then came the shield-biting. Teeth-gnawing would like some grim audition for eternity's edge. Peasants peering from door cracks didn't see tactic. They saw hunger. He's devouring the shield. Us next. Even fellow Vikings tread soft around them, co-workers you never locked eyes with. Raid mates welcomed, ... feast. Firmly uninvited. Nobody craved the sight of that fury trying to sip mead calm. Adapt to medieval folk, berserkers weren't oddities. They were nightmares given flesh, shirtless, roaring. Adrenaline's raw storm. And every soul who glimpsed one, charging axe high, Frothfleck thought, the same quiet doom, that's it, inland. Now, if medieval life already brimmed with burdens, plagues prowling, taxes biting, bread more sawdust than sustenance, Viking sails on the horizon, one horror stood apart. Red rain, ordinary downpours vexed enough, crops drowned, paths to mire, fields ankle-deep in what smelled of beastly remorse. But when droplets turned blood-crimson, ... villagers drew one shared breath. Ah, the end. At last, science whispers today. Desert dust, iron-laced grains lofted sky-high, blushing the rain and moisture's kiss. But medieval eyes knew no such lore. Their lens was plain, God's grim missive, devil's dripping note, or Margaret averse suspicious neighbor, stirring forbidden brews again. First fall of blood rain, streets filled with wails, ... From stunned shriek to outright anguish. Folk bolted door-toed. Signs, plagues, and in one scribe's steady hand, the sky bleeds. The sky bleeds. Poetic dread, if you never dreamed of airborne ochre, crops stippled scarlet, Cursed forthwith, laundry line draped, torched without pause, beasts blotched, kissed, shunned. Amid the whirl, a monk ever lingered quill poised. Heavens wept blood this morn. Calm for none. Priests summoned throngs hasty to the wet stones, beseeching mercy, while ominous tints soaked them through. Some swore iron's temps in the air true enough, yet red as heaven's sour scorn. Practical hands cup the fall, peering close. True gore? Nay, but medieval wit mused. Looks blood, falls rain. Thus, sorcery spawn. Any voice murmuring nature's hand? Swift. No room for reason mid ruin. Beasts, bless them, browsed on. Sheep cropping crimson grass serene. Horses supping ruddy pools untroubled. Hens gazing heavenward as if to shrug. We've endured worse. Stormside passed, sky staunched. Life lurched on plague shadows, levelords, loaves, suspect, longship lurks. Blood rain ended no world. It merely mimicked one. Enough to haunt a generation's hush. Think modern skies host wilder sights than monkish gaze. Linger on their ledgers. These were no midnight scrollers, no ale-fuddled dreamers, sober, celibate, quill-worn to bone, boredom's quiet kings. So when heavens stirred strange, they seized no shrug. Weather, nigh ink flew, like doomsday dawned. Chronicles brim, fiery cartwheels wheeling silent, flame shields afloat. Glowing galleons gliding, orbs a-whir passing, globe soft, all but the footnote. Swear not dream wrought, implied deep, scene unfolds. Vespers hum. Brother Thomas bursts cloister calm, sky burns, ... and wheels. Monks spill stones still yard, eyes heaven hitched. Meteors streak, halos hush, cloud kaleidoscope, consensus swift, God's test. Warning, flaunt. One murmurs, cloudlight's trick, shunned. Monks copied codex by candle, not for tame tales. No haze here, sketches stunned sharp, disk flames circling, vortex vessels, arc bright bows, even crust glow, akin to sky pizza prowling. One saucer classic. Modern minds might shatter. Knees buckled. Judgment's knell. Bread thefts tallied hasty. Others clutched calfskin, eager. Fresh script beyond begats, endless. Bold quills parsed. Angel armies, divine dazzle, peasants planetside. Simpler, sin, doom. Gerald's guilt anew. Scholars today, bolides, borealis, crystal crowns, sky mirrors, monk's mist. Yet their sky diaries endure. Earnest etch, lavish line, lost in wonder. Aliens, ori hobby-starved quills. Youth. Lingers, glow-wheeled, spin-sailed medieval firmament. Monks saw, and scribes sealed, lost in midnight wood, a doom's door ajar already. But mark faint gleam afar, soft, eerie, verdant ghost. Dead souls snared in stump flesh. Modern nod, bioluminescent bloom. Medieval mutter. Flee. Foxfire's fungal glow chemistry's quiet spark. But then, ghost gleam, vengeful wraith, would wander, iverind. Tinder questfuls, errand prime. Stump shimmers green, riddle ready. Drop load. Shriek, sprint hearth home. Birthing breathless fitness, epochs early. Tales kindled wildfire swift. Irony's ember amid blaze ban. Peasants breathed, dead haunt deep wood. Others, fairy forged sweet till tiny fiends truth dawned. Gurkfolk fanned flames, shun glow logs, soul spoil. Sure, dripping true terror. Foxfire flagged fiend caucus, drowned damned duskmoot, would watch full alive. Fair woods watched via fang and claw. Wolves whisper, bears bulk deemed snack suman. Terror twined tool, unwitting. Wayfarers wielded ghost lanterns, grim grip. Troops traced camp trails brave heart. None slept gloner, lest whispers wake. Folk fancied so, Burns bliss bold, pocketed prize, paraded home phosphor phantoms. Parents paled swamp sprite spawn. Fungus fair now, it's cosmic caveat then. Glow would know nature's nod, ... Forests firm, turn, trespass not chilled medieval marrow like man ablaze, ... unbidden. Life labored, pestilence, perspinch, loaves loamy, Norse Northman nigh, least craved, flesh spontaneous to pyre. Rumor rippled. Folk aflame sand spark. Hearth hug ale sip doze deep. Then torch human heedless. No query chased. Fear fleet sufficed. Truth tame, lantern lapse, taper tipple, spirit soak, cloth conflagration, collaborate, but medieval muse. Grandiose, fire fell, no mishap meek, devil dragged soul swift. Even candle dash close, taper, teetering lap dash perch, Folk drowsy drunk, despite dire warnings. Blame flew not to flames, foolhardy friend, nay witches, medieval shorthand for skies, spite or storm's sour mood. One voice pierced the pall. Witchcraft. All nodded grave. Blind to blaze beckoning perils, strewn room rife. Witnesses wailed. Flesh flared fiercer, swifter than hearth norm. Sense sure abode all ash dry, garb grease gorged flammable shrouds. Yet villagers veiled logic. Reason wreaked ruse. Sorcery's sly scent. Monks, manuscript, mad for marvels. Mind mishaps meticulous. Victims vanished to cinders. Legs lone, limbs lax unharmed. Classic chronicle cant. Ash heap, heart room. Shins serene standoffish, as if opting out of oblivion's orgy. Tales trimmed, truths telling. Tapers toppled, nigh nodders numb, Wool oil wed wicked. Hearth halls hazard hewn. But mundane, musing, dull, supernatural stirred souls. Rethinking risk. Amid abodes arsenican. Panic proliferated. Hamlets hide hearth laws. Hastishan sparks, if sip-soaked. Sneeze, shy, or simply there. Flammable folk fit freely. Today, truth tempers, no spontaneous soul spark. But then, torch tinder, any instant. Life's thrill turned terror-tinged. Medieval Europe. No tame tale. 12th dawn, Woolpit wolfdoom, unearthed, not fangs, but burns. Green-skinned siblings, strange-tongued, bean-bound soul sustenance, villager's verdict, frenzy foremost, query quaint, bread proffered, nay flesh, firm no beans eternal, proto-pure vegans, vogue-free, whispers wove wild fairy folk, wood-wraiths, demon duo, barons bemused, hey hoof, heavy here, verdant veil vexed vast, elves, imps, glogs, credence dash given, greenlings sealed sky's whimsy, underground curse-clad, drug some strangeness sated senses, noble nabs them, trove treasure akin to sneaker stash modern, tutelage tames, tongue twist English, bends, hue fades faint, nutrition's nod, unwitting, boy bows brief, riddles remain.
Yes.
Last lingers, lore lays dim, St. Martin's land, twilight twixt all verdant vale. Real realm, reverie, tunt, whist, liver lore, isolate, isle, medieval muse, otherworld offspring, wolf pit whimsy, list lengthen lore. Dawn's door ajar, peace pledge pondered. Sky splits sudden, trout thwacks pate, frog flurry, 50 finned, shoal-shocked swimmers sky-tossed. Animal airy natures, nudge rude, medieval mind melt, storm snatch shallows, schlep sky miles, splat sands mercy. No charts, no churn dash lore, Vibes verdant, witches, wrathful, frog, fierce, if flop frolic, cabbager, croons crop, plop, pebble green plummets, horde hails, wet wop. No for this. Heads huddled hasty hearth haste, heaven dash howl, or net newts. Paycomen primeval, famine flag, plague portent, Satan's slimy squad, scribe solemn, sin soaks ponds, priests plunge, robe ruffle, repent, right to universal unction, swimmers, worst swim serene, sky swoop, splat strange, manuscripts mock frog frowns, hens hairy, cat's case coy, curs clouds, storm size spent, sweep, stew, Margaret malign, world's warp writ, explainable eccentricity now. Heaven's jest then, timing tragic. Peasant pastime. No play need night kill clad. Heat hammered. Leet. Encased. 30-kilo oven ambulatory. Scorched summer air, athic, leech, steam, foul frazzle. Horizon hoves, helm horse haze. Sauna steedborn. Labor lulls. stairs slack not, splendor, sheer stupefy. Smith's sus supper on Steele's lab swift. Night's nix, nay peace, pride's prison. Heat haze, what's Auden, saddle's way, kettle dash cough. Nay, norm fine, nag, naysayer career, quit peasants. Proxipant, forge folk, flinch, innards iron, honor, helm, aheap, heroics, tilterments, tincontango, winter wind, summer scourge, sizzle symphony. Squire schlep, sweat seal, drag drooped duke, helm hack humidity, whiff wool wicked, joust, jolt jars, kilkin collapse, statue slump, limbs lewd, chivalry, nil nod, got woe, sanity shoon, sweat 3 liters tint trapped, nightly keen. Funniest forge fire farce, haunt horizons, bounty unbid, battle blight glow globes, glide night nigh, blue benign, verdant veil, bone white bob, corpse scandals, wisp willow, swamp side, decayed ants now, then, nope, field foul forever, trek, twilight trail, peril piled, lupin, lurker, plague, peculiar Margaret, gleam ghosts last, lunge field, bob beckon, brighter burn, will wistful, marshmire, man muck meld, gas ghosts gleam, or bowman. Night, knee wobble, logic litany, dead drift, demon dance, fairy fatal, Gerald guilt, rational, rare realm. Barren bedtime, bogey, night nix, soul suck swamp, ironic, mire menace main, lure lights, leglure, lethal, fog folk, folly, shooshook, soul snuff, monk's muse, majestic, souls soul-seek, chevaliers, guard ghosts grim. Fishermen glimpse them bog-bound, fairy fambush feared. Scholars sigh now, methane mingles phosphine from rot's rich yield. Least lyrical line ever limbed. 2 villagers then, corpse lights queue. Nightfall, nightmares, specters, fiends, doom orbs, afloat. Fox filching stray boot. Daylight dreads dire, dust delivered drifting glows, our forsaken fields. World woke watchful. Wrong way, would wander, doom dare denied. Yet wild man would woe, sway laid wary. Bigfoot's kin, medieval muddle, hair heaped, club clutched, tax truant vibe, art abounds. Shag shrouded giants glen guarding, stick swayed, stare startled, guests, nay. Tails toggle, titan, or hermit over hard, on hearthless hush. Forests, frotwolf whale, bear brunt, brigand blade, botany bitter, hairy sage sapling side, spare us. Site script standard, tinder trekker twig snaps alert, Hulk's hairhole child club hefted, peasant rush, prayer pelt, sprint supreme. Livestock lifted, trees torn, tree talk cryptic, would knows you. Mushroom moot marred. Sages spun, sylvan sentinels, soul shifted, sinsick, or bathless loners. Locks loose, lore lax. Both beckon belief. Fest frolics featured, fur-faked folk, furor fling at fair folk, creative carnival, draftsmen doted, moss-mused, musclemen, club-cradled, chased, maiden dash maraud dot kidnap, cliché, confounding core. Common kin, recluse, ranger, rogue runaway, solitude soul, literal lapse. Wood woes warned, civility's cusp. One wash wane from wild whirl, Terratinge tutor self-sight sharp. Soul shock stark. Mirrors, metal mirage, matured, middling, reactions raw, wrapped, ... Repulsed, erstwhile. Puddle peak vague, lake limp, soul's mere, foggy spud, polished plate, peasant piers, post plow, stranger plate prisoned, soul snared, plate, pulse quick, crope critique, crop cut critique, candid, warped wink, brow bent, skull skew, curse, crone, cataclysm, nobles narcissistic, gaze gorged, plume pluck, statch stroke, god gift grace, peasants ponder, plume puffed foul, monk mole's morals, vanity vice, priest pool, pride perdition, quill quest, essence, ectomy. Nay, burns bold, tongue thrust twin, wave worldling, doppel twin, parents pale, monucle, yops, Margaret's no mate mystery mind, flaw face framed, human hue, hurt hinted, portal puzzle, selfie seed, simple strange, Rome remote, ruin radiant, feign flash sunstruck, viaduct, Vast giant gird. Near, noise nest. Tension taut, chaos curbed scant. At million maze mired, alliangst, tenement hatter mark at. Paw flesh flanked. Shove spat, slurred slight, spite spar street scrimmage. Sphere free as focaccia. Cohorts. Augustus after. Augur enforcers elite. Late liberty. Coin clan. Brawn brood. Clout crew. Senator slaves. Household heavies. Common. Chin chest. Clip pace. Clash chance. Shoon. Nocturne. Lamplants. Knife nest. Oars and oft. Gonggerm ground gold. Jobless youth. Freed folk. Fast cash. Power pups. Proud penumbra. Procession. Pogrom pivot. Funeral. Faux flaunt. Forum. Fistfling finale. Arndedge. Tavern thug. Latrine lurk. Dice despair. Lead-eyed utility. Street sinew cheap. Voter vassal. Sure. Swift strike. No law. Lag. Shout swing. Subaros slip. Marble mythos masked. Street sway sovereign. Fear fiat. Fat fees. Collegia calm erst. Craft clan. Quarter quorum. Feast fund. God guild. Best. Bond bolster. But blazebread Rome. Innocence iced. Late republic. Rig route. Rabble ready. Structure stout. Chief charged. Coffer crammed. Hall hived hibe. Honed. Poles. Poach. Carpenter coin-clad clubs. Chorus rival route. Voter vex. Meat mall. Coin flowed. Fealty. Forged fierce. Sabora sprawl. Crowd crush. Core faction fissured. Senator swayed. Collegia cruised cloisters. Voter vanguard vigilant. Loyalty leaned loud. Rival rooters. Night noxious. Harry hurl. Bruise beat. Baker bands. Brothel broods. Crime clan kin. Levelet. Food fist. Tavern tyrant. Dyston duke. Market mogul. Senate struck sporadic. Disband decree. Vast vortex. Voided vigilance. Band. Burrow basement. Bath bivouac. Tavern tryst. Poles profited. Lax leash. Pivot. Poles pondered not PURLIEU-plague. City stride sovereign. Disrupt pole. Parade pole. Purge podium. Prowess public. Social seed. Street sinew spawned. Protopack. Purse-browed. Club-clad coin command. Streets. Strongest swarm. Shout storm. Stave swing. Letter Publius Clodius pool care. Thug Titan trailblazer. Patrician populist pivot. Patrician pedigree. Pleb pander. Grain grant cheap. Faux flay fierce. Subarosh shout star. Tribune 58 BCE. Band brood unbanned. No boon bland brigade bread. Patron purge. Prestige pump leaders. Pay plump plebs. Pulp pedal sway. Months meld. Mightiest mob mesh. Rome reckoned. Escort emperor. Chant choir. Club clear. Crowd call. Pole pantomime. Peer pummel. Forum foe. Row route. Cicero. Citiscad. Hearth hauler. Holding hauled. Gang. Gridiron. Train tandem. March muster. Meet mindful. Canonus. Crossroads crew. Conclave Ken. Feast flaunt. Force festival. Senate shutter. Fist fiat. Fine. Rivals recoil. Street scepter seized. Bold backlash brood. Senate stalwart spurn streets way. Milo match. Hammer hard. Aristocrat grow. Mob muse nil. Charm natural. Pompa patron. Senatorial silver. Squad spawn. Gladiator grade. Veterans vice grip. Lawlax lethal. Clodius collegia. Streets come Milo. Soldier street. Clash clocked. Market mall. Tavern tussle. Forum fray. Chant clash. Speech mash. Club cadence. Stone storm. Slink salvo. Fist fury. It's pole. Peril pass. Voter vanish. Rivalry ramped ruthless. Ambush art. Scout stock obsess. Stroll. Stratagem. Priest pace. Prudent. Temple tread tense. Milo menace. Muster main. Gladiator glare. Crowd cleave. Clodius checkmate. No cringe. Rome. Regal rival chess. Gang gambit. Crash keen. 50s BCE. Siege scene. Declaim. Palatine. Milo march. Forum fraught. Verse. Toss up thug thrash. Chant dash clout. Club dash. Crescendo. Dagger draw. Glad glory gore grind. Procession program. Speech stampede. Senate stalled. Guard garrison or ghost home. Clodius crescendo. Spectacles swarm. Torch trail. Traffic trap. Flinch. Mend. Mini maraud. Gladiator gash. Precise. Look, carnage keen, death dole, may many. Governance gridlock, meat mobbed, vote void, debate drowned, tavern torch, brawl blaze, momentum all, fear fief. Fracture foretold, 52 BCE January chill, via Apiel line. Clodius, country call, Milo meet march glad guard grand. Spark sputter, powder pyro, insulting, iron ignited, flurry, mule mad, servant scad, tails tilt. Clodius Q, Milo, malice, Malay mad, Clodius clipped in invade, dragged him, Oppian ash, terror torn, crowd cherished, no more, chaos crown, cry contagion, corpse cortege, rally rage. Forum fury, stone sling, sinute scorn, curia conflagrate beam blaze, statue scorch, record roan, republic riven, Milo moot, mob, mad, setachi, gang gorged, lawless, lurch, death detonated, year zealed tension, snap savage, forum feral, beer blaze curia crave, flame fang winter wake, dignity devoured. Imagine Rome in chaos. The Senate's meeting house, the curia hostilia, more sacred than many temples, was reduced to glowing ruins. This destruction was no accident. It was the result of the funeral pyre for Publius Clodius Pulcher. Ignited by his supporters after his murder in 52 BCE, the fire set the whole building ablaze. Signaling the unmistakable rise of street power over Senate authority, following this, Claudius's loyalists prowled the city, attacking anyone suspected of backing their rival. Milo, the streets echoed with fear. Vendors shuttered stalls, taverns boarded windows, families locked themselves in, praying the violence would pass. Fires glowed like a worm's last breath across Rome's skies, and law was what the first gang with torches and clubs dictated. The Senate, usually stuck in endless debate, found itself paralyzed by terror. Many fled to the countryside or barricaded themselves in their villas. Those who dared to attempt meetings were often chased away by mobs. Rome, once a seat of republican order, resembled a city held hostage by violence and fear. Amid the chaos, the idea emerged among the senators that only a powerful leader with soldiers could restore order. Though they hesitated to name him at first, everyone knew it was Pompey, the warlord who had dominated vast lands and had supported Milo. The Senate, fearful for the Republic's survival, turned to Pompey and granted him extraordinary powers, marking a desperate step towards centralized rule. Pompey's first priority was to reshape Rome's security, creating a permanent, disciplined force, the Praetorian Guard. Originally bodyguards for generals in battle, Pompey transformed them into an urban military presence dedicated to ending gang violence and securing the streets for governance without fear. For ordinary Romans, the arrival of the Praetorian Guard was a thunderclap. These were no rough street thugs or swaggering gladiators, but disciplined soldiers in shining armor. Their boots thundered as a warning across the cobblestones, scattering the once bold gangs. Milo's men, once free to roam, were hunted down, dispersed, or arrested. Claudius's remaining loyalists collapsed swiftly once faced with this professional military might. Districts like the Subura, long hotbeds of factional power, were swept clean with ruthless efficiency. Yet the Praetorians enforced their order with uncompromising force. Raids were frequent, streets searched, taverns emptied, and suspects detained without ceremony. Though the citizens welcomed the end of mob rule, they also felt the unease of military authority setting deep roots in Rome. After the fires died down and elections resumed under heavy guard, Milo was exiled, and his gang scattered like dust. Rome breathed again, but the fragile calm hinted at a profound change. The Senate that once governed found it difficult to imagine a city without soldiers patrolling the streets. Pompey briefly became the city's guardian, wielding near-absolute authority. His rise set a precedent. If one man with troops could save Rome from anarchy, why not let him rule permanently? Over the decades, this shift marked Rome's move from a republic to an empire, where emperors, backed by the Praetorian Guard, held the true power. The Guard itself evolved, becoming kingmakers, assassins, and power brokers, symbols of the very control the Republic had feared but eventually embraced. The gang wars had revealed the Republic's weakness and the cost of its cure. This dramatic transformation in Rome's political life, born out of violence and the struggle for control over the streets, defines a critical turning point in history, a reminder that The survival of a state often demands more than laws. It demands power. The Pony Express was a remarkable feat of logistics and bravery, born out of necessity across the vast and challenging American frontier. Some relay stations were hurriedly built under the threat of attack, while others stood so isolated that their nearest neighbor was 50 miles away. Yet against all odds, this intricate network came together remarkably well. By early April 1860, the line of stations was complete. Horses were ready, mailbags packed, and riders stood poised, revolvers at their hips. Geared for a job demanding exhaustion, peril, and an enduring kind of fame that few would ever know, the Pony Express sought a very specific kind of rider, not a soldier. Cowboy or gentleman, but someone forged from nerves of steel, fearless, ready to face danger head-on without hesitation. Recruitment ads explicitly called for young, skinny, wiry fellows no older than 18, often orphans, with expert riding skills and a willingness to risk death daily. Though it sounded like a stunt, this grim reality reflected the demands of the job. Most riders were teenagers, their light frames and lightning reflexes suited to the task. They earned about $100 a month, a handsome sum at the time, but what drew them was not the pay, but the thrill. The pride of embodying speed in a country desperate for it. Training was minimal. Riders had to be capable of sprinting a horse at full gallop, mounting and dismounting without losing momentum, firing a revolver from the saddle, and having the stamina to cross hostile territory alone. They favored practical clothing, buckskin jackets, soft moccasins, felt hats drawn low to ward off wind, gloves to fend off cold rides, and a revolver strapped to the waist. Many chose speed over weaponry, as carrying a rifle slowed them down, and hesitation could mean death. Their most prized possession was the Mohila specially designed leather mail cover with 4 locked pockets draped over the Oddities, to lift and swap onto fresh horses within seconds. Riders treated the Mohila as sacred. Losing their lives was tragic, but losing the mail was unforgivable. The reality of the job was harsh. Each rider covered 75 to 100 miles on each shift, changing horses every 10 to 15 miles, with no escorts or support. They traversed territories rife with danger, from tribes hostile to expanding settlements, outlaw hideouts, to mountain passes where snow could bury a man alive. Should a rider fall or a horse falter, survival meant running on foot to the next station. Despite these dangers, hundreds of young men volunteered, driven by the legend taking shape. On April 3, 1860, the Pony Express thundered into history. In St. Joseph, Missouri, the dawn crowd watched as the first rider mounted, spurring westward like a rifle bullet carrying congressional speeches, business letters, newspapers, and the hopes of a nation starving for faster communication. From that instant on, the Pony Express became a relentless, living organism. Riders galloped through endless Nebraska plains under the stars' vigil, crossed treacherous mountain passes, and braved storms that erased horizons within minutes. The system worked seamlessly as riders bolted from station to station, changing horses in less than 2 minutes, often arriving breathless and dust-covered, shouting mail. To the station keepers, who responded like clockwork, toughest challenge was the Sierra Nevada, with its jagged peaks hiding blizzards, avalanches, and deadly drops. Yet the riders pressed onward through snow so deep it swallowed horses' hooves. Mail starting in Missouri days earlier reached California in just 10 days, the impossible realized. Though routine might suggest monotony, the life of a Pony Express rider was anything but ordinary. The frontier was a relentless adversary. Thunderstorms with lightning sliced skies, windstorms that knocked hats off and pushed steeds sideways, dust storms that turned the world brown, and winters that plunged into bone-chilling cold. Riders insulated themselves with newspapers and wool, praying their horses would not stumble on hidden ice. Yet natural threats were only part of the danger. Native American conflicts flared, especially the 1860 Paiute War, where stations were raided, horses stolen, riders vanished never to be heard from again. Riders sometimes traveled at night without lanterns, relying solely on moonlight and instinct to avoid detection, making the journey even more perilous. Outlaws posed constant threats, too. While most riders carried revolvers or small rifles, they relied primarily on speed, adhering to the rule, don't fight what you can't outrun. Ambushes were common, with arrows lodged in saddles and bullet holes piercing jackets. Fatigue enveloped riders like a shroud, There were tales of riders dozing mid-sprint only to jolt awake as their horse veered dangerously close to ditches. Meals were quick and functional: cold biscuits, jerky, bitter coffee swallowed between heart-pounding sprints. Sleep was fleeting, caught in short, dreamless fragments. Even so, the riders persevered, driven by duty pay and the intoxicating legend burgeoning around them. The Pony Express quickly became a symbol of American frontier spirit. Riders, mostly young and reckless, became national heroes whose stories spread faster than the mail they carried. Famous names emerged, Billiam "Buffalo Bill" Cody among them, who later transformed his riding exploits into global entertainment, but began as a fearless teenager, tasked with relief rides. Cody once covered nearly 300 miles in a continuous run after a rider's death in the Paiute War, showcasing human endurance at its peak. Another legend, Robert "Pony" Bob Haslam, undertook the longest and most dangerous ride, 120 miles out and 120 miles back through hostile territory, surviving ambushes and freezing conditions. Such feats elevated the riders beyond mere employees. They became enduring icons of speed, bravery, and dedication. By summer 1860, the Pony Express was more than a mail route. It was a lifeline stretched thin across a volatile frontier. Conflict erupted along key route parts, turning once peaceful stations into battlegrounds. Entire teams vanished, horses were stolen, and riders faced ever-mounting danger. Still, the mail moved endlessly forward, riding the thin line between legend and survival. Some riders slipped through the shadowed trails under the pale glow of moonlight, their silhouettes barely stirring the night air. Others urged their mounts into a desperate gallop, betting everything on raw speed to outpace the unseen dangers closing in. A few hearts heavy with the weight of impossible odds turned back toward safety, knowing the frontier's fury could claim them without mercy. It was amid this searing crisis that the Pony Express forged its most enduring legends. Tales of unyielding grit whispered across generations. Riders like Pony Bob Haslam pressed onward through a hail of arrows, dodged ambushes that erupted from the darkness, and found stations reduced to smoldering ruins, yet they refused to let the mail falter. Station keepers huddled behind barricades in those crude wooden outposts, sustaining themselves on meager rations of dried meat and bread, their nerves frayed by the acrid tang of gunpowder hanging in the still air. Urgent dispatches raced between California and the East Coast, reports of mounting violence. Troop maneuvers through rugged passes, the raw pulse of frontier life unfolding in ink and haste. But survival exacted a steep toll. The company summoned armed escorts to shadow the routes, rebuilt charred stations from splintered timbers, replaced herds of stolen horses, and offered hazard pay that strained already thinning coffers. Money had always been a fragile thread for the Pony Express, a bold financial wager teetering on the edge from its first hoofbeat. The Paiute War tipped that balance toward ruin, yet the riders and keepers clung to their duty with a fierce, unspoken loyalty, not merely as employment, but as a sacred bond of pride and brotherhood forged in the saddle's relentless rhythm. As the conflict stretched on like an endless dusk, mail runs slowed to a cautious crawl. Stations blinked in and out of existence like faltering lanterns against the wind, and the ceaseless strain etched deep lines into every face involved. Still, the Express endured, bloodied, weathered, astonishingly resilient, a thin thread of connection, holding fast against the gathering storm. But endurance came at a hidden cost, laying bare the operation's delicate fragility, like a spider's web trembling before the gale. As America inched toward the cataclysm of the Civil War, whispers grew that sustaining such a perilous, draining service might prove impossible, no matter the glory it had claimed. Even at the pinnacle of its fame, with newspapers singing praises of record-shattering runs and continent-spanning speed, a quieter revolution crept across the plains. The telegraph mere wire, humming with electric life, stretched silently from horizon to horizon. Swift as thought, indifferent to blizzards or bandit raids, promising messages from coast to coast in mere heartbeats. While riders braved the wild's wrath astride lathered horses, telegraph crews drove poles into frozen earth, draped lines over unforgiving mountains, and sun-scorched deserts, undeterred by their own trials of storm-torn cables and wartime ambushes. With every mile of wire unfurled, the future inched nearer, and the Pony Express unknowingly thundered toward its quiet twilight. To the public, The riders seemed invincible. Their exploits splashed across front pages during sprints, half the time deliveries that shrank the vast continent to a rider's stride. Yet the company ledgers whispered a grimmer truth, hemorrhaging losses from horses, repairs, stations, and wages that profits could never match. The federal government, their hoped-for savior, pinned its faith on the wire, not on revolver-wielding youths. Telegraph lines faced their own frontier baptism, scales ripping spans asunder, peaks defying every hammer blow, assaults amid the Paiute unrest, but the builders pressed on, pole by relentless pole. When eastern and western networks linked through Salt Lake City, the countdown echoed like distant thunder. Riders sensed it in the crisp mountain air. Station keepers caught the murmurs drifting on the wind. The wire's coming. Only 100 miles out now. Soon, no need for us. Relief mingled with a quiet ache for some an end to peril and bone-deep weariness. For others, it stung like betrayal, their hard-won legends snuffed by sparks and steel. Yet the express raced to its finish, undaunted through howling blizzards, wartime shadows, night-haunted trails. Mailbags still slapped onto fresh saddles with a familiar thud. Horses still tore the earth in breathtaking surges. But no courage could outpace progress. On October 24, 1861, the transcontinental telegraph hummed to life, binding east and west in an instant's electric whisper, the first true voice across a sundered land. Moments later, the Pony Express faded into obsolescence. 2 days on, operations ceased without fanfare. No final trumpet call, just an abrupt silence where once hoofbeats had drummed like war. The age of the horse yielded to the era of the wire, as inexorable as dawn chasing stars. When the Pony Express shuddered in that fateful October of 1861, it slipped away not in blaze or thunder, but in a soft hush of fulfillment. The telegraph spanned seconds where riders had wagered days on life's edge. Yet for its fleeting span, the Express refused oblivion. Its myth swelled instead, nurtured by those it had served. Riders dispersed into the frontier's weaves counts for Union and Confederate ranks. Lawmen patrolling dusty trails, ranchers taming wild acres, explorers charting unclaimed vistas. A handful drifted homeward, burdened with tales too vivid for belief, 100-mile sprints through tempest's roar, outrunning death's ambush, cresting the Sierra Nevada with hands frozen to reins and a fire within that would not yield. Those stories meandered from dimly lit saloons to ink-stained newsprint, from hearthside murmurs to rowdy frontier gatherings, each telling burnishing the legend until the Pony Express loomed larger than the land itself. Stations, once lanterns piercing the void, crumbled gently into time, some toppled by furious storms. Others buried in drifting sands or folded into rancher spreads. A precious few lingered, their weathered beams mute sentinels to an era when speed was born of muscle and will, not lightning in copper veins. Though it spanned a mere 18 months, the Pony Express embodied far more than couriers on the gallop. It stood as testament to the raw courage needed to stitch a fracturing nation when civil war's shadow loomed and unity frayed like old rope. These young riders bridged coasts with their speed, fostering a fragile sense of oneness in hours of peril. Telegraph eclipsed them, yes, but it could never dim the romance of the rider etched black against a dying sun. Oscilla, heavy across the saddle, vanishing into velvet dark on faith and fleetness alone. It was the frontier's final heroic exhale, the last wild pulse before wires wove the West anew, marking an end to solitary dashes bearing a nation's whispered secrets across defiant mountains. At dawn, Constantinople stirred like no other city woven into the earth's vast tapestry, half eternal empire, half boundless bazaar, wholly alive with the breath of ages. Long before officials unbarred the grand palace gates, and well before the imperial court roused from its cool marble halls, the city's true pulse throbbed through narrow streets and mist-kissed waters. Boats groaned softly against the docks of the Golden Horn, their hulls rocking gently as fishermen called across the glassy waves, drawing in the dawn's silver catch with steady hands. In the labyrinthine alleys of the markets, vendors knelt to strike flint, kindling braziers that sent the first lazy spirals of smoke drifting skyward, curling like ancient secrets into the awakening air. Those fragrant tendrils wove the tale of Constantinople itself, of sizzling oils yielding to flame, roasted nuts popping softly. Tangy vinegar misting the breeze, fish grilling with a hush of skin crisping, honey pooling warm over glowing metal pans. They carried scents from the world's far-flung crossroads, sharp Greek herbs mingling with Persian spices, warm earthiness. Roman olive oils, green bite, Syrian dates, dulcet richness, Cappadocian cheeses, creamy Thames. This was no mere capital of stone and scepter. It was a living crucible where centuries of savor collided, traded as freely as silver denarii passed from palm to calloused palm. As the sun climbed, bathing domes and minarets in honeyed light, the streets bloomed into a gentle tapestry of motion. Bakers trundled wheeled ovens over uneven cobbles, their iron hearts pulsing red as they baked sesame-crusted bread rings, steam rising to tempt the first laborers with their yeasty warmth. Chickpea sellers called above the murmur, scooping steaming handfuls from broad bronze pans, tossing them with sea salt's crunch and crushed corianders, subtle fire, the aroma alone halting passers-by mid-stride, drawing them into its quiet spell. Near the harbor's edge, vendors tended tiny fish over open flames, skins crackling faintly while vinegar and garlic danced in sibilant harmony. Children darted through the throng, copper cups brimming with wine-steeped figs, sticky sweet syrup trailing from their fingers like golden threads. Couriers hastening toward the imperial quarter snatched fried dough, balls lacamades. They were called drizzled, thick with honey so redolent it lingered on the tongue long after. Every quarter held its own whispered specialty, every shadowed alley its signature perfume drifting lazy on the breeze. And it was not the lowly alone who savored these dawn offerings. Courtiers in silk-slippered grace, soldiers fresh from barrack stone, monks gliding from nearby monasteries, wove through the crowds, blurring the empire's divides in a rare, unspoken equality. A prosperous merchant might share spiced chickpeas with the dockhand at his elbow. A noble reining his mount could pause for a skewer of lamb, grilled tender by a Syrian newcomer whose feet still ached from distant roads. These stalls were more than sustenance. They were the empire's true forge, where tongues, faiths, and stations melted together over simple, shared warmth. In Constantinople, to eat from the street was to taste not just fare, but history's slow unfold, geography's vast embrace, empire's intricate weave all in one lingering bite. And as the city fully roused, its vendors readied for a day unlike any other, swift as the Bosphorus current, loud as 1,000 voices in chorus, bursting with flavors that promised to linger long into the starlit hush. If dawn set the streets humming, by mid-morning, the markets erupted into full, symphonic life, a collision of cultures. Ingredients and tongues crammed into squares, no wider than a heartbeat. Here, the wealth of 3 continents funneled through like rivers to the sea, and every stall, every shout, every spice-powdered gust mirrored that boundless abundance. The Forum of Constantine, the thrumming macros and bolos, harborside stalls hugging the Golden Horn. Twisting lanes of the Augustan all throbbed with an ancient, eternal cadence. Iterns cried in Greek's fluid lilt, Armenians' rolling depth, Latin's crisp command, Arabic's silken flow, Persians' melodic rise, their voices blending into a symphony as chaotic and harmonious as the sea itself. Traders from Cappadocia arrived bearing cloth-wrapped blocks of salted cheese, creamy and brine-kissed. Syrians unloaded jars of date syrup thick as midnight, fragrant sesame pastes swirling like desert sands. Egyptians hefted sacks of lentils alongside spices vivid as stolen sunset sturmeric's bold saffron. Cumin's warm earth, colors to rival any artist's dream. From the Black Sea rolled barrels of anchovies glistening in oil, smoked eels coiled like secrets, caviar sealed in waxen hush. Each new arrival layered another note into the market's endless, savory hymn. The food stalls shone as stars in this constellation, drawing lines of workers, monks, sailors, far-wandering merchants, queuing patiently for their favored morsels. One brazier master coaxed honey-drenched pastries swollen with crushed nuts, their glaze gleaming like amber dew. Nearby, chickpeas roasted in vast iron pans until they burst like soft fireworks, warm and inviting. A Greek vendor at the city's heart simmered spiced lentils to a melt-and-thunged velvet, ladled into clay bowls with olive oils, golden veil, and a bright lemon squeeze. Scents shifted like dreams with every step. One alley breathed slow-cooked lamb, scented with mint S, cool whisper, and oregano S wild earth. The next carried fermented fish sauces sharp. Briny Thames, a remnant echo from the old Roman West, drifting lazy through the sun-warmed air. In this eternal bazaar, every breath was a journey, every taste a chapter from the world's unwritten book. A Persian merchant tended his skewers of grilled meat marinated long in the deep tart sweetness of pomegranate molasses. Watching as the glaze turned to a shimmering caramel over beds of glowing coals, releasing a smoke that curled lazily into the morning haze. Nearby, a Jewish baker shaped rounds of bread, dusting them with sesame and nigella seeds, before sliding them into the ovens embraced soft and steaming within, their warmth rising like a gentle fog into the cool dawn air. Beyond the simple delight of flavors, these markets offered something deeper, a quiet window into the empire's boundless weave of lives. Patrons in rough wool tunics brushing shoulders with silks, dyed imperial purple, a monk pausing for figs. Beside a soldier dust-streaked from the Anatolian frontier, a noblewoman, veiled in fine linen, sharing a weathered bench with a porter bent double under sacks heavier than his frame. Here, amid the steam and sizzle, food softened the hard edges of rank and creed. Mirroring the empire itself, plural, vibrant, a chorus of voices loud with life and layered with endless savor. If Constantinople cradled one food as its quiet emblem, woven so deeply into the rhythm of days that the city would feel hollow without it, it was the roasted chick known to locals simply as stratia. These humble golden orbs sustained the weary, dock workers hauling crates at the Golden Horn, monks drifting between shadowed monasteries. Everyone from the lowliest laborer to the hurried scribe, cheap to make, hearty enough to quiet a growling belly, endlessly adaptable, they suited a place where hunger shadowed haste like a faithful companion. Vendors began their ritual before the stars faded, soaking dried chickpeas overnight in cool water, then coaxing them to life over wide iron pans atop pulsing coals. The peas danced and rattled in the heat, popping softly as their warm, nutty perfume unfurled through alleys and forums, drawing the curious like a siren's call. With wooden spatula sellers tossed them deftly, scattering sea salt's crisp bite, cumin's earthy whisper, coriander's floral lift, or peppercorns ground fine from distant India. Some added a splash of vinegar for temps, others thyme or mint for a herbal breath. No matter the blend, the aroma alone tugged souls from a full block away, promising comfort in every crunch. Chickpea sellers dotted the city like stars in a familiar sky clustered near the hippodrome, where chariot crowds surged like tides ringing, the forum of Theodosius fountains where travelers sank on to cool. Marble edges lining the mighty walls where centuries paced their endless watch. Soldiers snatched parchment-trapped handfuls mid-patrol. Children wheedled coins from pockets with wide-eyed pleas. Merchants fueled long haggles with a quick cone. Even courtiers rushed by palace, summons pilfered a portion when meals grew distant dreams. Their appeal lay in unadorned grace. No grand forge or costly hoard required, just a modest brazier and pan. A vendor could claim any shadowed arch, tavern flank, or clamor-filled lane. The rhythmic rattle and crackle of roasting peas blending into Constantinople's ceaseless lullaby. More than sustenance, Stratia bore a deeper echo across Mediterranean shores since Greek and Roman dawns. Yet in Byzantium, they bridged worlds. Greeks with local herbs, Syrians weaving Eastern fire, Armenians folding in nuts, Persians dusting tart sumac. Affordable as dawn, they dissolved divides. Rich and ragged alike savored the same warm, salty grasp, a subtle nod that even the plainest bite held the empire's mosaic. Roasted chickpeas pulsed as the city's steady heart. Then laucumades were its spark of joy, golden spheres of fried dough. Drowned in honey so fragrant and warm that whispers told of emperors pausing mid-procession for a stolen taste. Ancient as the hills, tracing roots to Greek hearths long before walls rose around the Bosphorus. They bloomed into perfection here, leaving travelers breathless enough to pen homesick odes. Vendors stirred wide bronze cauldrons of bubbling oil before the rush, blending flour, yeast, and goat's milk into dough airy as a sigh, beaten smooth with patient hands. Scoops dropped in clusters, puffing instantly into crisp, hollow-paled straw to amber gold under vigilant watch, stirred in swift circles for even grace. The true enchantment unfolded post-fry, Drained onto wooden boards, they met cascades of hot honey laced with cinnamon's glow, orange peels, bright zinger mountain herbs, wild note, some crowned with crushed walnuts crunch, others veined with grape molasses, keen edge, soft within, shatter crisp without, aromatic to the marrow, they bewitched without mercy. Lucumides summoned all souls, children hoarding copper for a skewer of 3, soldiers off seawall vigils claiming warm fistfuls, merchants provisioning trays for aids, even monks bound by modest vows yielding on feast days to their pull. Sellers lingered outside great churches, honey's perfume twining with incense spilling from portals like shared prayer. In celebrations they passed as emblems of grace. Festivals rang with their sizzle amid melody and mirth. Winter's Bosphorus gales found solace in steaming cones, warming chilled fingers and spirits alike. Strangers marveled Persians likening to home's fritters, Italians praising unvarnished bliss, Arabs hailing honey's clarity. In a realm of trade, faith, empires weave. Laucomades whispered that rapture cost but a coin, tasting of paradise unbidden. If honey and nuts crowned the sweet, the sea's sharp Thames defined the marrow Bosphorus breath in every gust. Dawn fishermen hauled nets heavy with silver scales, anchovies flickering like scattered coins, mackerel gleaming bold, mullet and eels twisting alive, sardines shimmering in first light. Moments later, they graced street stalls as salted fish, the cities enduring him to wave and brine. Art and craft entwined in their making. Vendors gutted and cleansed at harbor's edge, rubbing coarse sea salt into yielding flesh, packing barrels or spreading red mats to cure. Some smoked over oak pine embers, slow and low, veiling air in savory hush. Others grilled swift vinegar splash, oregano pinch, olive oil gleam and served, steaming to the throng. Harbor hands queued for wraps and thin bread, ballast for cargo haul marathons. Sailors ashore speared sizzling anchovy skewers, lemon squeeze from nearby cries. Fishermen supped remnants straight from braziers, dipping in garlic sauces thick as tradition. Salted fish knew no station's bar. Aristocrats harbor-strolling savored smoked mackerel's opulence. Coastal monks stocked dried halls for meatless fasts. Palace courtiers heated chefs' nods to pristine batches. Outsiders gaped, Black Sea traders at anchovy zeal, Arabs tracing salty smoke to kin dishes, Amalfi Italians lauding humble alchemy. More than fair, it etched identity's bond, trade's pulse, necessity spun to splendor. Fresh faded swift, but salted fed legions, journeyed far, graced emperors and mendicants alike. Over every brazier, fish skin crackled on hot iron, vendors' calls hawking Bosphorus essence itself, a salty serenade drifting eternal. If salted fish and chickpeas thrummed the vigor, wine-soaked figs stirred the Soul Street luxury veiled in modesty. Sweet and heady, embraced by dockhand and silk-clad courtier alike. Treasured Mediterranean wide for ages, in Constantinople, they soared through a alchemy-blending Roman echo, Greek rite, Near East, spice of preparation, turning simple fruit to ambrosia. Children clutched copper cups brimming with them, syrup trailing sticky gold. The scent alone halted strides, promising indulgence wrapped in everyday grace. Figs steeped slow in wine's deep rouge, emerging plump and perfumed, vendors threading them onto skewers or scooping into cones for hasty joy. Cross divides they roamed from harbor grit to palace whisper, minding that in this eternal crossroads, even fruit could whisper of worlds converged. Vendors kindled their fires under cover of night, simmering dried figs in broad copper pots brimming with watered wine often, a humble local. Red or the fragrant whites from Bethnia's sun-kissed vineyards. Cinnamon sticks steeped alongside mastic resin shards, cloves, or star anise, ferried from distant eastern harbors. Infusing the air as figs swelled like burnished balloons, glossy with absorbed sweetness. By dawn, the brew had woven into a dark perfumed glaze, each fruit cloaked in temptation. Pots then warmed over braziers as the city stirred, their scent a whisper of spice-veiled wine and fruit trizzing above the market din, luring souls like bees to unseen blooms. A lone fig, dripping warm from the pot, traded for a single copper coin, affordable for the laborer, exquisite for the lord. Sailors docking at the Golden Horn claimed vine-leaf parcels by the handful, Monks savored feast day bowls in measured delight. Young lovers perched on Bosphorus steps shared them, syrup tracing sticky paths down fingers. Physicians touted their balm for weariness, digestion's woes, melancholy's shadow-early wisdom that sweets mend the spirit's fray. Strangers stood enchanted, Persians likened to spiced preserves, Arabs to lighter-date syrups, Latins from faded western holds, deeming them empire's softest solace. Diary pages praising how they bottled Constantinople's salaged, refined, laced with half the world's exotica. Wine-soaked figs transcended mere fare, emblem of a realm where empire and piety cradled humble joys. Constantinople's streets wove no ordinary bounty. Freshness, aroma, variety paled beside its alchemy Greek, Persian, Roman threads, entwined, not shyly, but fierce, birthing flavors unique to its crossroads pulse. Greek roots ran deep. Olive oil cascaded over all, oregano, thyme-savory scented plain plates, sema-toasted calouri, rings-anchored meals, laukumades, and lentil stews echoed Hellenic hearths alongside fetakin and honeyed wine. Persian silk wove through, Eastern traders cinnamon, saffron, cardamom, sumac, fired marinades, pastries, fruits, pomegranate molasses, glazed meats to tart sheen. Lamb skewers hissing beside Greek grills, bold pairings born of Anatolian bounty. Rome lingered in shadows. Garam's air leakened sharpened broths. Wine-herb sausages steamed from pans. Crust-crisp loaves soaked oils. Salted fish stalls nodding to ancient Macellum parchment wraps. Fusion reigned of fish grilled, Greek-oiled. Persian-sumac-dusted. Roman flatbread bound. Added nuts Roman rich. Persian spiced in Greek puff. Lentils melded vinegar Roman. Garlic Greek. Cinnamon Persianed as his child. Holy the cities. No peer matched its equity. Elites and throngs grazed shared braziers. Sense, no divider. Tenement poor, kitchens scant or smoke-choked. Thrived on stall sustenance chickpea bowls oil-drizzled, fish skewers, warm rings, fig fists fueling kin for coppers scant. Middling scribes, artisans, officials mid-dayed ashed for honey puffs. Lemon anchovies amid talk, sesame loaves on errands, honing vendors' craft to loyal whims. Nobles veered post-Hagia Sophia for mint lamb. Senators' Augustan palace bound snacked salted fish. Generals' post-war room claimed herb oil bred horseback. Emperors' whispers summoned street gems to banquet silk. Arabs gawked. Nobles' fishermen parody. Venetians' malfeasance lauded divides blur. Persians hailed plebeian finesse rivaling courts. Stalls knit classes soldier lentil shared with treasury quill. Monk fig beside Aegean, captain hierarchy hushed, in flavors tied. Centuries on, Constantinople's alley, ghosts haunt, Istanbul's waterfront sesame rings, Greek honey pastries, Levantine lamb spits, Mediterranean wine fruits. Beyond receipts, philosophy endures, shared, portable, fragrant, unassuming joys for all. Vendors humanize stone streets into feast halls, markets to kinship knots. Portable bites, millennium antecedent to today's rush. Bustle-fed laborer, monk, sailor, noble, forging bonds beyond rank. Diplomacy savored, envoys, odes, merchants, recipe halls, legions flavor adoptions, migrations, wars, trades dispersed tastes into Italian, Balkan, Armenian, Arab, Turkic vein spices. Cures, preserves veiling Byzantine breath. Digs yield charred peas, brazier ash, amphory wine figgle, born. Old Istanbul cores hosts ancestral echoes, chestnut roasters, sesame bakers, syrup ladlers over laukumadskin, dust flavors immortal, sesame crunch, honey drop, fish sizzle, fruit spice, murmurs of collided realms. History-scented lanes, snacks empire-laden,